Welcome to podcast number 1 of the Breakthrough Real Estate Podcast. I'm Eric Sachs. This is Nathan Froelich. We're co-founders over at breakthroughbroker.com. Really excited to start this podcast because we've been doing this for 13 years and we want to take some of what we've learned and share it with the real estate world. And this podcast is going to be multifunctional. We're going to be doing skill development. We're going to talk a lot about marketing. We're going to be interviewing some of the top coaches and real estate agents in the industry. So Nathan, let's get ready to rock and roll. We thought it'd be kind of fun today to talk a little bit about if we started over today, knowing what we know now, what would we do differently? So I don't know, Nathan, you like that topic? Talk to me a little bit.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because that was so long ago when we first got into real estate. I got in before you. And the thing that strikes me the most personally, I had no clue that it was a sales job. I was like 22-year-old mechanic. My girlfriend was like, you should get your real estate license. And I'm so grateful that she told me to, because that was the beginning of a long adventure. And then I had the unlucky benefit of getting 2 listings right when I got my license.
Right. So you thought it was easy. You're like, wow, this is...
Yeah, I was like, this is killer. I still remember the houses that I listed. And I remember...
Future sister-in-law, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Your brother's girlfriend was one of them. And I remember just being so clueless because, sitting down with them, not knowing how any of the stuff worked. But, and then I got these big commission checks and I was like, this is the coolest job ever. And then I just floundered and struggled and beat my head against the wall. So I think if you're listening to this and you're thinking about getting into real estate, you have to know that there is a heavy sales component. And it can be done a million ways. So if you're afraid of sales, it doesn't mean you can't be a good real estate agent. It just means you have to find a method that works for you.
I agree. It's funny because I kind of got into it the same way. Nathan and I were friends. We were actually drinking buddies prior to this. And I knew he was in real estate. And I had a buddy from college who was killing it as a real estate agent. I was like, if he can do it, I can do it. Sorry if you're watching this, Mike, though. And then... I was a police officer at the time. Some of you may or may not know. I chased bad guys for 13 years, and I was a single dad. So I wanted to make some more money, create some more wealth for myself. And then I saw another police officer doing real estate and I was like, I think I could do that. So I went to real estate school. I don't know if you remember this. I worked day shift as a police officer and real estate school started at 5. I got off at 5. So I would go up and we had take-home police cars. So I'd show up, take my bulletproof vest off, and my gun off, and I'd sit in real estate class in my blue pants and black t-shirt for like 4 months. It was pretty funny. And got my real estate license, and I got lucky too right away. It's so weird. You hear a lot of these stories right off the bat. I had one friend of mine who was a cop who wanted to buy an investment property, and I told him I had my license, so I worked with him. And then I had another quick lead from a buddy in real estate school who didn't get his license yet, so it was pretty awesome. And then I also struggled for a while, and
you know why that happens, right?
Oh, why?
Because the 3 or 4 or 5 months that you're in real estate school, you're telling everyone that you're going to get your real estate license. So inevitably, through those conversations, I think a lot of people have deals out the chute, which is awesome. But you have to know that it might be from, a span of time to get that business, which isn't always going to happen. You've got to prep yourself financially.
Talking about it forever.
Yeah.
You do when you're in real estate school.
Yeah, for sure.
So I did it for a while and kept calling Nathan for help. Every single deal I got, I'd call Nathan like 20 times. for help because I didn't have a real solid mentor base. And so finally, Nathan's like, why don't we open our own real estate company? And I was like, because he had been in it for 2 years. So Colorado, we could have. So I was like, let's do it. And so
we were really naive.
we got a logo. That was the first thing we did. I was like, let's get a logo. So we got a logo. And I was like, now that we have a logo, we have a real estate company. So we got the logo, we opened a real estate company, and the rest is kind of history. It was pretty awesome. We took off. We were great partners. I think if we look back, the theme of this is what would we do now as knowing what we know now and starting over again. I think we would even play off our
individual strengths
better than we did. We fell into this thing where Nathan is super organized, logical, good with money, all of the things that a business needs to run successfully. And then I was outgoing and would talk to anybody and wanted to sell 1 million homes. And so, but I don't think we identified that till years later. So we didn't really play off of that as well as I think we could have.
Yeah. Partnerships are so tough. We didn't know that going into it. And I think a lot of people who get into partnerships partner with someone that's similar to them because that's comfortable, and you don't realize at the time you need a partner that's strong where you're weak and vice versa. And like you said, we just got lucky when it came to that. But
what would you tell an agent about that who's just starting on their own?
About partnerships?
No, about what they do if they're weak in something. Like, what would you tell me to do if I'm not organized?
Yeah, I mean, the hardest thing is the self-actualization to understand that, right? Because a lot of times we don't see our blind spots. So I think having someone who can help you identify those and then actually confronting it and being like, okay, I need to confront the reality that I kind of suck at, closing deals. I can start relationships, but this is a skill I need to develop where people actually want to work with me instead of just say they want to work with me or whatever the case might be.
So one of the things I want to do in this podcast for however long we do it, this is episode 1 of let's say 500. The goal. I want to call out little nuggets every time we find one or think of one or we're interviewing somebody. So I think this nugget number 1 in this conversation might be, if you're an individual agent, work on some self-actualization. What are you good at? What are you not good at? Enhance the things you're good at, work on it, and either learn to do the things you're bad at or find help. Whether it's whether it's a virtual assistant, if you're not organized like me, business software, if you're not good at the money side of things. So, good. I love that. That's really good. We did none of that in the beginning. We just great short game. We did before. It was pretty funny. And that's why we chose this topic for the first podcast. Is I think we learned a ton along the way.
Yeah.
What
I think so for me, if I'm thinking about some of these basics, knowing that it's sales and getting comfortable with that and working to your strengths, because let's say you hate picking up the phone and calling people, you need to figure out a different approach I remember. And it's so funny because now I would pick up the phone and call anybody, but I was mortified to do that. However, it was like this mental block. I thought that was the only way to get business, and I couldn't do that one thing. So I was sort of stuck. So if I could do something differently, I would have had that self-actualization and been like, okay, well, I'm going to have to find a different approach. And maybe that's open houses. Maybe that's digital, which was really new back then. I could have probably been more of a pioneer when it came to digital stuff like online leads or door knocking, whatever it is. If you're stuck because you're not comfortable doing something, you better find something that you are comfortable doing.
Yeah. It's funny because I'm thinking back on all the stuff we did, and we had no plan.
Yeah.
We were so I woke up one morning, guys. So I did cop work in real estate. Nathan and I's work really took off because while I was a cop, I was talking about real estate. I would eat dinner in the hospital and tell the docs and the nurses, how's work, how's life? Great. Both jobs are keeping me busy. Both jobs. I mean, yeah, I have a real estate brokerage on the side. And we were doing really well for a while, and then I kind of burned out. I think you remember there was one day when one of our colleagues called Nate. So I was working from 4 in the afternoon till 2:30 in the morning. And I was a training officer, so I had to wrap up all the training. I'd get home at like 4, and I'd be back at the real estate office at like 8:30 or 9, work till it was time to go back to the police department. I did that for a few years. And one day Nathan got a call from one of our realtor friends, and he was like, is Eric on drugs?
Yeah, it was Rob.
Drug. I saw
He leaks you then into you or something, and you were so like
strung out, dude.
strung out, or no sleep and stress.
Yeah. So and the same day, my boss at the police department was like, dude, you need to choose because you look terrible. So I chose. Long personal story through that, but I retired from police work, woke up one morning and went to the office with Nathan, and I was like, holy shit. I'm not getting a paycheck every 2 weeks, and the city's not paying for my insurance. And I had a major anxiety attack. So we should have gone back and created a freaking plan. We should have done what we teach now, which we didn't do back then, and figure out how much money we wanted to make, how many homes we needed to sell to make that amount of money, and all the marketing activities that go into it. But instead, we started going to like 3 meetings a day. We'd go to coffee, lunch, coffee. Who can we talk to today? Which was a good marketing effort for us. And I still have that lunch that we went out with that builder, Jeff, at Austin. Rings in my head. But man, we turned over every stone with no guidance, really. It worked out for us, but I think it would have worked out double if we actually had a plan. So,
well, and I remember too, desperation is a terrible place to do business from.
Oh my God.
And you and I weren't desperate so much, but when I was on my own and struggling, it's so funny. If we're talking about things I would have done differently, I would have understood that the minute your customer thinks you're desperate, they just kind of run the other direction. And had I realized that, I would have tried to manage, my the way I came across, or just tried not to get into a situation where I was desperate. So if you're thinking about that, just again, be aware that that's a big problem. And remember, it was like, if you think about the commission and how they're going to negotiate your commission down, it will happen. If you aren't worried about it and you just know 100% that you get X percent, it never even comes up. And so it's really funny how those little things can have a big effect on you.
I mean, just sitting here talking, I can't believe we survived so long without doing a plan. So now that I teach business planning to so many agents across the country, I mean, that might be top between that and leveraging our CRM better. We'll talk about that in a minute. I think one of our biggest mistakes early on was not planning better, not creating that plan and that roadmap, and getting up in the morning and having tasks instead of like getting up in the morning and just on and bigger chaos, pure chaos.
Yeah, for sure.
So we got lucky, I think, super lucky. In a way, we were desperate. We had no plan B. So for those of you listening to this or whatever, Nathan and I started this real estate brokerage. I put my whole police pension went into the brokerage. Nathan's savings went into the brokerage. So there was not a plan B. We were going to make this work. I wasn't going to go back on bad guys. So there's a level of desperation, but it was a level that drove us harder. It wasn't the
And we were
level of
doing enough business that we weren't like, oh man, how am I mean, it was tough at times, obviously. It was lean, but it wasn't like, how am I going to make my house payment desperate?
right. Exactly.
So,
What next? What else would you do differently? I know what I will say, but I want to hear what you have to say.
well, if I'm thinking about like the brokerage, once we started recruiting agents, and we recruited some awesome agents that have been lifelong friends, obviously, I would have been more intentional with who we recruited. And to build a successful brokerage, it is so important to pick the right people, to have culture, because there's not a lot of, things about a brokerage. There's a million different options and they all kind of have their pros and cons. If you don't have culture, it's just going to be a churn and it's going to be a slog, and
Culture of
a couple of bad apples will just crater your culture.
I think a culture of success. I mean, and so when you're saying that, we probably should have hired. At first, we were just trying to put butts in seats. We thought number of eight.
Or is more.
We learned really quickly. To any of you team leaders listening to this or watching this, or broker owners, we learned really quickly that the agents who weren't selling any homes were taking up 80 or 90% of our time. And we weren't paying enough attention to our rock stars because we were trying to get agents to sell a few homes. And it was a tough place to be for us. And we did not do a good job with that, for sure.
And I'm sure if you're a broker owner, you're saying to yourself, like, well, duh, of course, everyone knows that. But I think the trap you slip into is you convince yourself that this person's not a weirdo, or that they are gonna,
Yeah,
they're not gonna hurt your culture. And it's easy to self-deceive a little bit and turn a blind eye. And you have to trust your gut. I think every time we hired someone that we shouldn't have, deep down we knew it, right?
Green. It's fun. It's interesting. We work with 600,000 realtors, and we're able to hear a lot of stories. So I've heard stories recently from team leaders and broker owners that are doing some really cool things when they hire people, putting them through an assessment, not just looking at their transactions, which they are, and not taking new people, or taking new people and putting them in this program. And if they don't pass the program, they can't stay in the company.
Yeah.
Those are cool. Those are great ideas right now.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll have some of those people on this podcast, and we'll talk about brokerage and culture and all of those things in the future with people who are doing it. But again, if you're taking notes on what we wished we would have done, what we would do now that we didn't do back then, it's hire intentionally. And I'm not saying don't hire new agents, but hire new agents who are going to fit in the culture and put them through a program to make sure that they succeed.
And if you have a policy that says after 6 months, if you haven't sold a home, unfortunately, you have to find a new place to, do business, stick to it. And those, I think, those conversations suck, but every time you have one, the next one's a little easier. So,
yeah. CRM. I mean, I see realtors cringe when they hear that word, and I still speak to groups where the majority of the people in the group are using like an Excel spreadsheet, or I'll be like, what are you using for your CRM? And they hold up their phone contact list. I promise you, the second or third biggest mistake we made was not leveraging our CRM better. Like, Nathan had been in the community for years. I had been in the community for years. Our sphere was probably 2,000 people, maybe more. And we did not organize it. We didn't segment it. We didn't group it. We didn't market to them in any special way. We were really bad at staying in touch with our past clients. some of that's the biggest mistake we made. We were still successful, but we would have been way more successful.
Yeah, we would have had so much more business, and it would have been more consistent
Yeah.
because with a good database and a good number of past clients, if you stay in front of them, you can consistently plan on new business every month. Like it's just it's a it's a it's a law of physics almost, because you're doing what you have to do. I think now too, back then, and this is a cop out, the software sucked.
Oh my God. How did they put it on how did we get our CRM?
Yeah, it was on a CD-ROM, and we installed it on the desktop computer.
We had a nice lady. She came out and she sat at my desk and installed it for like an hour and a half.
Yep.
That's like unheard.
Act consultant.
It was ACT, ACT, ACT for Realtors. Awesome. Any of you listening to this that remember ACT for Realtors?
You're old.
Yeah, you're old, I guess. But honestly, guys, it's over talked about, and I think agents think it's overplayed. But man, it's the living, breathing real estate business. It's your business. It's everyone you know, and everyone who they know, and everyone who your wife or husband knows, or your boyfriend or girlfriend knows. And it has to live somewhere so that you can make phone calls and email them and send a newsletter to them and stay top of mind when the neighbor 3 doors down, parents need to downsize, and you're one of 3 agents they know. That's how that works. So we did a terrible job of leveraging our CRM back in the day, and man, if we did that better, I think we would have doubled our revenue also. So
yeah, yeah. I think the other thing, when we sold, houses, the average days on market was like 180 or something. Yeah. It was rough, and I wish so badly if I could go back that I would have perfected the art of telling people your house is not going to sell at that price, and we're all lying to each other if we sit here and say that, well, maybe there's a chance it will. And if they just were absolutely unwilling to lower the price, you either say, fine, I'll list it for you, but it's not going to sell. The only person it's going to help is me because it'll give me some exposure. Or maybe I'm not the realtor for you. And I think both of those options are okay. I've talked to agents, very successful agents, that they'll take a way overpriced listing, but they're super upfront with the client about it. And that's where we kind of messed up. I think oftentimes when you're at the kitchen table, it's like, you know what? I think we can get this done. I think there's a chance. When in the back of your mind, you're like, there's just no way. And then what would end up happening to you and I is we'd get beat up by the client when it didn't sell.
I think today it's harder.
Yeah.
Today the client has access to more data. They know they have access to articles and this and that. I think perfecting the art of having the tough conversation with a potential client is something that I think we should delve into more at Breakthrough Broker. I think that we have an expert in on, and I like that. So whoever's taking notes on our podcast, our team watching this, write that down for a podcast future.
Yeah.
It's a really good point.
No.
What we would have done if I go back to the CRM, remember when we talked to remember when we did those professional interviews for Breakthrough Broker at the beginning? We were doing the realtor interviews, and we talked to,
oh yeah.
And we were like, how are you getting
the expert interviews?
Yeah, expert interviews. She's like, I haven't paid for a lead in 15 years. My sphere generates all my leads.
Laura Oliver, right?
Yeah, Laura Oliver. And now when you watch online and everyone's talking about homes.com and Zillow leads and this lead generation resource, and these leads are good or bad, look, that stuff's expensive. I think we could have done a better job if we nurtured that sphere of influence in our CRM of creating that business. I think anyone listening to this podcast can create a business that feeds itself if you nurture the people you know, period. And you don't have to pay Zillow. And if you sell 15 homes this year, those 15 people can give you a lead next year. And if you sell 30 homes and 30 people from your past job, if we did a better job, our business would have fed itself, and it didn't. And so anyone listening, I mean, if you're focused on buying leads and you're focused on all this technology that's out there, great, but it's expensive, and you're always
expensive, and it changes. I've heard stories where realtors had this incredible machine going, and then Zillow changes the plan or the program, or someone outbids you. And now what are you going to do? So the redundancy is not good when it comes to that kind of a business that's based on that. And I think, to your point, if you've got 10 past clients and then 20 and then 30, if you're marketing to them, telling them that you love what you do and you're always available to help anyone they know with real estate, you should consistently get a referral or two per person per year, maybe, or let's call it 0.5 referrals per person per year. You know that you can just, again, like Eric said, feed itself.
Would you have done anything different in the sale of our brokerage?
I mean, had we known that we wanted to sell it, we could have been a little more intentional. We were so green when it came to selling a business. And, hindsight's 2020. That was an amazing opportunity to learn about how a business is valued and so forth. Selling a real estate company is tough. There's just not a lot of value there. There's not a lot of IP. You might have a brand, and it's really the number of agents that you have. And if it's kicking off some profit, which a lot of brokerages barely do, those are the core value, drivers. So I don't know. I'm sure there's a bunch of stuff I would have done different, but
if we focus more on brand and market share and brand identity, and if everyone in Fort Collins knew Infinity Group, I think we did not start the brokerage thinking about the end game ever until the end game.
No. Yeah.
Well, I guess my advice to myself would be, if we're talking to everybody about what we would do now,
different. Yeah.
I would have started the brokerage thinking that maybe we'd sell it someday. We started the brokerage to sell real estate. We didn't think so. If you're starting a team or brokerage now, think about those things. Think about what's valuable to a bigger brokerage coming in that might want your market share or your top agents or a brand that you've built that everyone knows. We did not think of any of those things. And that's really important in today's world for valuation, when, like Nathan said, there's not a lot of actual value in a real estate brokerage. So what value do you have? You have your database, you have your market share, you have your track
reputation,
record of growth, and reputation is what another brokerage might come in and buy you for. Recently, my good friend Brian North, and we'll have him on this podcast for sure, built a ridiculous brand in Phoenix. And if you're listening to this, you remember North & Co. And I haven't talked to him, but I guarantee he got acquired by Compass. And I guarantee Compass bought what Brian was building: growth, market share, rates, and great agents. And I bet you he thought about that from
or at some point prior to getting an offer.
Absolutely. So, if we were to do it again, I think our personal brand wasn't amazing either. So,
Yeah.
we could have done a better job building brand. And if you're listening to this, like, what do I mean by brand? It's not our colors or our logos. It's what people thought of when they thought of Nathan and I. It was hard to get rid of the mechanic cop stigma in
Yeah.
our database, and so I think we could have done a little better job there too. I think
For sure.
building a brand, like what we stand for, what we're good at, and so
Also, literally, I think at the time I put so little value on branding. Like the idea of a bus bench or, a billboard was just a huge money drain to me. And I wasn't thinking long term enough. I was thinking more like, no, what will get us more business today? But having a brand that's recognizable in your local market is incredibly valuable over time. But you have to, that's a marathon, which there's no better time to start than
you have to think of brand.
as possible. Yeah. Yeah.
What else? What if we were like, break your broker's gone? We got to start selling and open a brokerage and a team tomorrow. What would we do different?
Gosh, what else?
No, we'd spend more money on ourselves,
Yeah.
not spend enough money on marketing.
No. We basically took every dollar and then the next day woke up and went and found more business. Yeah.
We definitely should have spent more money on marketing, which would have helped branding, which would have helped all the things we're talking about.
And just consistent business that you can kind of count on through the highs and lows of the market and everything else. So
The marketing budget. If you're listening to this, you need to spend money on your business, right? Whether that's how you get that brand out there, whether it's direct mail or social media strategy or renting a movie theater and inviting your past clients in.
yeah. Well, and I think I would have run the finances a little differently because every time we made a commission, we paid it out to each other. I think it would have been interesting to put it in a bank and say, hey, we're going to take X amount of dollars every 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. And ideally, the bank account grows, you normalize your income, and then you're not thinking from, again, that desperation mindset. And, it's more of a mindset of ample, finances.
Yeah, I wish we would have done that. What the heck?
Well, and then you can budget your life more responsibly because it's easy to have a big, I remember months where we were making 6 figures and then you go and spend it like crazy because that's human nature. We weren't wildly irresponsible. You and I weren't like, buying sports cars, but had we just let it sit there and taken paychecks, your life is less stressful.
We were spending $8,000 on a water bill in Vegas, though.
Yeah. Right. Long story that one time.
Talk about that off the podcast.
Water is not a euphemism or whatever. It was literally bottled water we spent at the day spa or whatever club. That was awesome.
My wife told that story in Costa Rica last week.
That's funny. I think the total bill was that much, but like half of it was bottled water.
All right. What else? What else would we do today to get a jump start and do better than we did 10 years ago?
Systems and processes for sure.
Yeah.
We had some, but it was fairly loose. And I'm thinking of transactional stuff just to streamline everything and make life easier and, we were constantly getting signatures at the closing table or having to chase down signatures and probably having better support staff. We were kind of cheap. I was the cheap one. I always wanted to do everything ourselves. And I don't think you can build a bigger business when you're trying to do it yourself.
I think if we started it back again today, I would have listened to my affiliate partners a little more. We had so many of our title partners coming to us and telling us they had these ideas, and we'd be like, yeah. And Sean Archer would come in and be like, hey, we got to do this. There's this postcard thing we could do, and we have this marketing service that we could, and this is RESPA marketing service that we can help you guys with. And we were like, yeah. And then, our mortgage broker would come in and say, I have this website you can give your consumers, and they'll love it. We're like, yeah. And never actually took part in what they were offering. And I think knowing now, being more in the title world and knowing what we know now, I think I would have listened to those guys more and actually taken them up on some of the opportunities, because knowing now what I know, they want us to sell more so they get more business.
Yeah.
So the suggestions they're making are legit, right?
Yeah. And they see what other people are doing that's successful. And to an extent, right? I mean, not 100%, but they do. Success leaves clues, and they're kind of picking up on stuff.
Yeah. So I think that would be good too.
Are we getting close to time?
I think we're good. I think I'm excited about this. To remind everybody, this was podcast number 1. We're going to be talking about current events and skill and mindset and skill enhancement and marketing ideas. And this is really going to be breakthrough real estate podcast. We're excited about it. We're going to have some great guests on, and we hope you keep listening, tuning in, and we'll bring it every week.
Cool. Thanks, Eric. Talk to you soon.